McGraw-Hill Professional presents Always in Fashion, From Clerk to CEO, Lessons for Success in Business and in Life. Written by Mark Weber. Narrated by Mark Weber with a contribution by Jesse Weber. Only in America. Preface. Human Nature. Success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan. There is an ancient Japanese story that three samurai each told from their individual perspectives. There was a great battle. The shogun was saved by the samurai, yet only one could have saved him. The others were not mentioned. My wife and I went to Egypt, where we took a cruise down the Nile. It was fascinating, to say the least. Although I remember the pyramids and Sphinx, which I toured on an Arabian horse, I remember one story even more clearly. After touring all the ancient monuments, one astute tourist asked the question of the tour guide. Egypt has a 3,000-year history, but it looks like all the surviving monuments and temples have the name of the same pharaoh. Why is that? The guide smiled and said, "That's human nature. Each successive pharaoh had the prior pharaoh's name sandblasted off of everything and replaced with his own name." With this as a background, I must state that the book is being written with the knowledge that my name has been sandblasted from the events, accomplishments, and plaques in my prior business lives. It's human nature to recreate or recredit accomplishments in the absence of the samurai, the pharaoh, or in this case, the executive. I am sure many people from my former life will be surprised to read that I existed or that many of the accomplishments were actually mine. Nonetheless, these stories or insights are true, and they are mine. As I often say, there are no flukes in business. You can't have a consistent or important career without earning it. In my case, my journey from clerk to CEO are the facts, and I earned my way there at PVH. Act 2 at LVMH is something I talk about in detail. I apply many of the principles to governing in the business world. These ideas and principles have served me well. This is currently my 8th year in an originally 3-year term. I would like to think there are lessons to be learned, and maybe, just maybe, you will enjoy my story and career to date. Mark Weber. Introduction. Work is work if it's work. So far, I've had a fantastic career. I started out with nothing. No experience and no career guidance, and became CEO of one of the most prestigious men's companies in the world, and then the CEO North America of arguably the finest luxury company in the world. The fact that you've picked up this book and started listening means that you're at least a little interested in knowing more about the fashion industry and how to succeed in it. You're probably even more interested in finding out what you can learn from my experiences that will help you in your own career. If you work in the fashion, retail, or luxury goods industries or want to, I believe this book will help you in ways you never thought possible. If you work in any other industry, this book can help you because much of what I've accomplished, achieved, and learned over the course of my career applies to anyone working anywhere. This book grew out of the desire to help people who may be in the same situation I was in when I started out. I knew no one. I had no connections. I had no advisors. I had no idea how to get started in a career. I only knew I wanted to. I am first and foremost a creative person. I learned early on, however, that creativity without business knowledge and skills is limiting, and I was willing to work hard, very hard. I believe the story of my career and the experiences I've had, good and bad, successes and failures, will be helpful to other people, and not only people working in the fashion or retail industry, but people working in any industry. I've learned everything I could about the workings of the fashion business and business in general. I've gained a wealth of knowledge and learned lessons that I think are interesting and inspirational and can help people learn and grow. I've lectured to students from many walks of life, and whenever I do, the majority of questions I'm confronted with and asked to relate to take the following form. How did you get where you are? How did you become successful? What were the key elements of getting ahead? These questions come not only from young people who are just starting out, but also from senior executives in other businesses and industries. As we know, in today's economy, there are many people who are out of work or in jobs they're unhappy with, or who don't have the careers they want. I've been asked so often about my success that I've started to feel more like an employment recruiter than a business manager. So many people seek me out and ask for help. This book provides guidance on problems that many people in many industries face. Simply put, if you love what you're doing, you're going to love your career. It's very important to find something you can enjoy doing every day. If you don't, it will be work. You'll be miserable, and you'll suffer through each day. If you really want to get ahead, you have to find your niche, something you really are passionate about. Then you'll never complain, you'll never feel work is drudgery, and you'll be moving in the right direction. Your work won't be perfect, it never is, but you will be fighting through the politics and people and focusing on learning and performing, not on the drudgery or misery of misspent time. I realized right away that I enjoyed the world of fashion, and everything I did grew from this feeling in my heart that I was doing something I wanted to do and could be good at and excel in. People need to find their calling. Maybe you won't find it right away, but if you really want to have a chance to be successful, I advise you to look for something you're going to enjoy and not be afraid to change direction if you don't. I truly believe that one of the most important factors, maybe the most important factor in being successful, is finding something you want to do. Some of you listening to this book may think, that's easy for you to say. You found what you love right away. Some of you may feel you don't have any idea what you want to do with your lives. I understand that. But I believe that if you really think about it, you may already know in your heart of hearts what you want to do. Or you may learn what it is from a teacher or someone else in your life, a friend, a partner, a family member. You may not realize it in your first job or your second job, but I believe you'll know at some point during the course of your life. I ended up in fashion by accident. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I graduated from college. Then when I started working at my first job, it just felt right. That's what happened to me, and I believe it can happen to you too. I believe there are lessons from my career that can help others have the kinds of careers they want to have, and I'm willing to share my story, mistakes and all, to provide that help. I've organized this book into 4 parts. Act 1 describes how I got started in the fashion business, the hurdles I overcame, and the lessons I learned as I worked my way up from an entry-level position as an assistant designer to the CEO of the largest shirt company in the world. Then I was fired, and I had to learn how to find a job after working for a single company for 33 years. The intermission reveals how I applied myself to the search for a new position. Even though I could have easily retired and never worked another day in my life, I didn't want to do that. As too many people today know, looking for work when you're older is no picnic, not even if you've been a CEO. But I persevered, and I found an even more exciting position at Donna Karan International and LVMH. Act 2 describes the challenges I faced when I began the second phase of my career at DKI. The brand was bigger than the business, and my mission was to meet the company's financial goals. To do that, I needed to build the brand, find new ways to market it, and establish some basic rules and procedures to ensure the company ran smoothly. Along the way, I learned about the women's fashion business and global business, and I share those lessons here. Act 3 provides a variety of other ideas and principles that I think are helpful to anyone working in any capacity today. Some of this is specific to the fashion industry, but all of it is useful for anyone who wants to succeed in any business. I hope you agree, and I wish you good luck in your career. But remember, luck will only take you so far. The rest is up to you. Act 1. In the Beginning. Chapter 1. I wasn't supposed to have this career. I didn't have any direction when I was starting out in my career, and I didn't have anyone to advise me. I had amazing, wonderful parents. I was loved and nurtured, and they taught me right from wrong, black from white with no gray. They were good providers with excellent moral standards, and they absolutely were my role models in life. I would not trade my childhood for anything. However, neither of my parents went to college. My father was a printer for the New York Daily News, and my mother was a bookkeeper. They both worked very hard, but fairly or unfairly, I didn't view them as role models for financial success. We lived in the New York City projects. I wanted a financially secure life for myself. I knew it was out there. I was the first in my family to go to college. I didn't know what I wanted to study. I just knew I wanted to go. My family didn't have the money to send me to an out-of-town school, and so I went to a city school, Brooklyn College, because it was affordable. I majored in education and sociology because I wanted an easy time in college. That's not what I would do today, nor is it what I would advise anyone else to do. My parents could not provide the insights I needed other than to suggest I become a doctor or a lawyer. But I wasn't interested in either of those professions and did not think I could master the training. I'm not blaming anyone, I'm just stating the facts. They did their best, and all their hard work set an important example for me. But I wanted to escape from Brooklyn. I had always worked from the time I was old enough to do so. I started ironing shirts for my mother to earn an allowance and understand work. To this day, I enjoy ironing. I find it very calming and satisfying. My first real job was in a post office. I worked as a mail sorter one summer when I was 15. After that, I worked in retail stores, selling men's clothes. It was easy. I didn't need to have any special training. I liked clothes, and I felt comfortable doing it. My first job in retail was as a salesman in Levine's, a local men's and boys store, a job I got in high school. It was a successful second-generation family business in a shopping area in Flatbush, near where I lived in Sheepshead Bay. I knew people who worked at Levine's, and so I walked in one day and asked to see the owner. He hired me because I had the right look to work in a men's clothing store. I was always into fashion, although I didn't realize at the time that I would have a career in it. That wasn't where my head was at. I'm not suggesting that looks and fashion sense are the key to getting your first job. Some people get hired because they're polite and good-natured, and many business owners want to hire people who will get along well with their coworkers and customers. Some people get hired because they're very smart and quick to learn. Some people get hired because they're hardworking and that work ethic comes through in an interview. Today, my advice to people, young and old, who are looking for a job is to figure out what's special about you and find a business that will appreciate that skill or talent or quality. The owner of Levine's was selling children's suits to parents, so he wanted someone who would present his merchandise well. When I think back on that now, I realize that looks, not substance, got me the job. I had a lot to prove, and I had a lot to learn about life. You need to find what will appeal to the owner or manager of whatever business you want to work in. I worked at Levine's all through high school, and then I moved on to another retail store in my neighborhood, Bogart's, where I worked part-time throughout my college years. It was in one of the first malls that opened in Brooklyn, the Kings Plaza Shopping Center, and Bogart's was the most prestigious store in the mall. It looked very expensive, with marble floors and beautiful fixtures, and it sold beautiful, expensive clothes. It was a multi-brand store that offered the best American brands and emerging designers, such as Polo by Ralph Lauren, as well as European designers. It was like a small Barney's or Bergdorf's. When I graduated, I didn't have a clue about what to do next. This should relieve some of you who are in school or have graduated recently and are perplexed or panicked about what to do. You're not supposed to know. For those of you who have ideas or do know what you want to do, more power to you. The rest of you will reach your destiny by accident. I was a member of that group. I didn't know where to begin my career. All my friends had gone to Europe to celebrate graduation. I didn't have the money to do that, and I felt responsible for myself and for my future. Therefore, I looked for a job instead. I learned that work ethic from my parents. Although I enjoyed working at Bogart's, I viewed it as just a job, not the first step toward my future. I had no idea how to start a career. I didn't have a clue how to apply for jobs, other than walking in and asking to talk to the manager. I didn't know what was involved in a job interview or how I should prepare for one. I believed I could find success only in Manhattan, which I believe was the big time, not in Brooklyn. I didn't think I would be successful getting paid a commission based on how many suits I sold, and I didn't believe that type of work melded with a college education. Also, I didn't know that retail was a real career, that there were big stores with great training programs that would develop people into future retail merchants who could rule the industry. I had absolutely no idea how to become successful. I didn't have the right mindset. I didn't go to the finest prep school or graduate from a prestigious university. I didn't intern at Fortune 500 companies. I didn't have any training or preparation to begin a career. I also didn't have any connections or friends whose families had come over on the Mayflower. I didn't even know any professionals. I didn't have professors in college who asked me what I was going to do with my life. In fact, my parents didn't even ask me what I planned to do after college because they didn't have careers. They had jobs. They thought I would just keep working at Bogart's. I didn't have any mentors or any other role models in my life who could give me advice or direction. I was prepared to work because I always had, but the only thing I knew how to do was smile, greet people, and sell suits, and being charming would only take me so far. I had a serious desire and drive to make something of myself and to have a better life financially than my parents had. Also, I had traveled a little, nowhere exotic, just to Florida, the Caribbean, and Central America with the money I earned at my part-time jobs in college. I loved to travel, and I met interesting people who were different from the people I had grown up with because they were worldlier and had more life experience. Traveling made me realize how sheltered I was and how little I knew of the world. And it triggered a desire in me to have a bigger life. I just needed to figure out how to get started. I decided I wanted to be a newscaster. I was interested in the world around me. It seemed like a cool job, and I liked that newscasters looked and sounded good. I thought I was well-spoken and looked good enough to do that job. Thus, I followed the same tactics I had used in getting jobs in retail. It didn't occur to me that I needed skills and training, or that I couldn't just walk in off the street with a heavy New York accent and get a job sitting at a news desk in front of a TV camera. Yet that was exactly what I tried to do during the summer after I graduated from college. I had a tan, my hair was long, and I was well-dressed, although I had holes in the soles of my shoes, which I covered on the inside with cardboard. I thought I looked terrific. I drove into Manhattan, double-parked in front of the buildings where there were TV stations, and left a friend in the car while I went upstairs to try to get an interview. The first station I went to was WOR, which was Channel 5 in New York. I walked up to the front desk and said, "I want to interview to be a newscaster. Who do I speak to?" When the receptionist stopped laughing, she said, "You're kidding, right? No one's going to interview you the way you look." I asked her what she meant, and she said, "You don't look like a newscaster. Where did you go to school? Did you study communications?" When I answered her questions and she realized I knew nothing about the news business, she gave me one piece of advice. "If you're really serious, get a haircut and move to Ohio. I think you have a shot at getting in the front door there." After a few more encounters like that at other networks, I gave up the idea of becoming a newscaster. I didn't want to cut my hair, and I certainly wasn't going to Ohio to apply for jobs. I needed to find a new idea for what to do with my life. Little did I know that inspiration and help would come from the unlikeliest source if you open yourself up to it. Chapter 2. I'll take luck wherever I can find it. I went back to my job at Bogart's. I didn't know what else to do, so I kept working while I tried to figure it out. Then I got lucky. One night, I told another salesman I couldn't get any interviews at what I thought I wanted to do, and that I didn't even know how to begin a career. He told me he had a family friend who owned an employment agency and offered to arrange for me to meet him the next day. I was taken aback. I wasn't really asking this guy for help. I was just talking about my situation. Yet he had offered to help me find a job. I jumped at the chance. The next day I went to the office of Julie Pepper. I told him that I was having trouble finding a job and no one wanted to interview me because my hair was so long. I asked him for advice and he said, "I don't think your hair matters. I think what you're about is what matters." Like most good interviewers, Mr. Pepper instantly sized me up and thought of the fashion industry, which is not as conservative as other workplaces and would appreciate my personal style and fashion sense. He said, "I have something I think would be good for you. It's a great company. VanHeusen." "You mean shirts? Isn't that an old man's company?" I wasn't excited because to a young guy that company didn't have much appeal. It seemed sleepy to me. He said it's not just shirts, it's a very good, solid company, and I think it's the perfect place for you to start. Mr. Pepper asked me to trust him. I did, mostly because I was desperate to get a job, and I found out soon enough that VanHeusen was a public company and one of the top 3 shirt manufacturers in the United States. I don't know if Jules Pepper specialized in recruiting for the fashion industry or if he had jobs in other industries in mind, but this was what he offered me. He also sold me on the company when he said it was looking for smart young people with fashion sense, and he thought I would like working there. Since that day, I've met many people who had a similar experience but didn't listen to the person trying to help them. They thought they knew more than the person making the suggestions, or they didn't like the company or the industry or the job being offered, and so they just ignored the advice. I don't know what would have happened to me if I hadn't accepted my coworker's offer to meet with Jules Pepper, or if hadn't agreed to go on the interview that Mr. Pepper recommended. All I know is that interview led me to a company I worked at for 33 years as I climbed the ladder from the bottom all the way to the top, and I owe both of them so much for that. Mr. Pepper was my first mentor, and I learned you can never tell where or how a mentor may appear. Ever since, I've kept my eyes and ears and my mind open to new opportunities and new possibilities, and that mindset has never failed me. I firmly believe you should always answer when opportunity knocks, because you never know who or what is going to be on the other side of that door. I could just as easily have said no thanks to the salesman at work, thinking, I don't want to meet with an employment agency. I want an interview with an actual company that can hire me. Or I might have thought it would be a waste of my time, that meeting this guy wouldn't lead to anything. I believe, however, that you should always accept someone's offer to help and make new contacts because you never know where they may lead. In my case, that meeting led eventually to my becoming the CEO of a $2 billion company. Jules Pepper also prepped me on how to answer the questions he thought I would be asked at the interview. Today, of course, everyone knows or should know that when you interview for a job, you have to be really prepared. You need to know something about the company that's interviewing you, and it's especially important to consider what's important to that company and why you might fit the bill. The first question Mr. Pepper asked me was, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I don't have a clue." That obviously wasn't the right answer, but since I didn't know what I wanted to do, I didn't know how to answer this question. I tried again. "I'd like to work in a big company in New York." Mr. Pepper said that wasn't the right answer either. He told me I should say that I'm fascinated by the fashion business, that I've always wanted to work in the apparel industry, and that I really want to work hard and learn as much as I can about the business. I thought, okay, I can do that. Then he asked me, "How much do you want to make?" And I said, "As much as I can." He said, "That's not the answer. Let's try again." "How much do you want to earn?" I pulled a number out of the sky and said $25,000. He said, "That's not the answer. The answer is, it doesn't matter." Of course, everybody needs money to live, but when you're starting your career, that's the last thing you should think about. Instead, you need to consider more important factors. Is this a good company? Is it an industry you'll like working in? Will they train you? Does this company promote from within? Do you have a chance to succeed? Do they treat people well? I had never heard anyone talk in those terms, and what he said made a lot of sense to me. His advice paid off. The very next day I had an interview at Phillips-VanHeusen, now PVH. The company was founded by the Phillips family in Pottsville, Pennsylvania in the early 1900s. Originally, it manufactured shirts and sold them to coal miners as they exited the mine. But over the years, the company had expanded its product line and locations well beyond that. It owned retail stores, a sweater mill, and a suit company, though shirts were still the cash cow of the business, bringing in $250 million a year at that time. The office was located at 417 Fifth Avenue, 4 blocks north of the Empire State Building in Midtown Manhattan. I was supposed to meet with Sid Goldman, the vice president and general merchandiser, but when I arrived, his assistant came out and said, "Mr. Goldman isn't ready yet. Would you mind waiting in Alan's office?" Alan was a very good-looking guy in his mid-20s, an impeccable dresser, very sophisticated, with a great sense of style which impressed me. I still had some misgivings about working for an old man's shirt company, but when I met Alan and saw there were other young people working there, I started to feel like this company might be a good fit for me after all. Alan was busy. He was packing up some things as though he was going on a trip, yet he was willing to talk as he did so. I was only mildly interested in the conversation till I asked him where he was going, and he said he was going to Europe. I immediately thought of all my friends who were backpacking through Europe while I was looking for a job, and I asked him where he was going on his vacation. Alan said, "I'm not going on vacation. I'm going on business to Paris, Milan, London, all the fashion capitals. I'm a designer, so I travel several times a year to Europe and other places to find ideas and inspiration that I could apply to what we do here." When he said that, I was sold. I made up my mind right then and there that if I could get to Europe on business by working for this company, I really wanted the job. Plus, I would be working in Manhattan. Now I wanted to know even more. Since the job I was interviewing for was an assistant designer, I asked Alan how long it had taken him to get from assistant to designer. He said about a year and a half. I thought to myself, I don't know how good this guy is, but I know I can do what he does. I was very competitive, and so I was already thinking that I would have to beat his record to get promoted. But first, I had to get the job. At the moment, though I really didn't know it consciously, I was establishing my first goals in business. To succeed in business, you must know what needs to be done and how to get there. My first goal was simple: get the job, and then become a designer in less time than Alan. By the way, Alan turned out to be Alan Flusser, one of the first gurus of men's fashion. He went on to have his own house of design and write a number of the best menswear style guides that were ever written. I have all of them in my home library. As I said before, you never know who's going to be on the other side of the door when opportunity knocks. Fast forward a half hour later when I was called into the interview with Mr. Goldman. Since I now knew I wanted the job, it didn't matter to me anymore what VanHeusen was or wasn't. I was interested, and I was impressed. Now I just had to impress my interviewer. Fortunately, I was dressed really well in a 3-piece suit with a European cut. I had learned a lot about men's fashion from selling high-end suits to our clientele, and one of the perks of working at a men's store was that I could buy clothes for 50% off. The salesman had to look good, and so we needed to wear high-quality clothes. And thanks to Jules Pepper, I had an idea of what this company was looking for and how I might be able to impress my interviewer. Sure enough, the first question Mr. Goldman asked was, "What is it you want to accomplish?" With Mr. Pepper's coaching in my head, I answered, "I'm fascinated by the fashion business, and I've always wanted to work in this industry. I want to learn. I want to be with a good company that is proud of its products and is willing to train someone like me who will work hard and smart to do whatever is needed." Then he asked me, "Do you have any idea what you want to earn?" I replied, "Money is not an issue with me. Doesn't matter. What matters is learning. I want to learn and contribute. I'm sure the money will take care of itself." Every question Mr. Goldman asked me was one that Mr. Pepper had given me the right answer to. I've often said I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. I was always grounded, and to this day I don't care where the next good idea comes from. Jules Pepper talked to me for only about 30 minutes, but in that short time he taught me valuable lessons. Be precise and focus only on the important issue or issues. The first job should be all about learning. Have a goal. Get the job. Mr. Goldman hired me that day as an assistant designer. I was essentially a clerk. I was so excited that I immediately called my mother. "You're never going to believe this. I got the job with a salary of $8,500 per year. And not only that, I'm on the executive payroll." I didn't know what that meant. I only knew it sounded good. It wasn't until later that I discovered it meant I was exempt from overtime.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?